All right, gents, raise your glass. Today we welcome Ryan Steck back to the show.
Hey,
There he is.
feels like we've done this before.
I feel like I was just here.
Yeah, seems
I
so
think I changed my shirt.
familiar.
Well, the last time you were here, Ryan, it was under the auspices of your alter ego, the Real Book Spy. But this time you were here as Ryan Steck, debut author. Big difference.
Yeah.
So why don't you give our viewers a quick Real Book Spy summary of Fields of Fire?
Right.
400 words.
400 words, yeah. So Fields of Fire is a modern day Western. It's like Chuck Box, CJ Box meets Vince Flynn. It stars a former Marine Raider named Matthew Red, who gets kicked out of the military for reasons he can't really control, and goes home to his little hometown in Montana, where he's not been for over a decade, to find his adopted father has been murdered. And the more he looks into that, the more he unearths a global conspiracy that only he can stop.
Oh, nice. That's a back cover right there.
Yeah, that sounds damn good.
That might be exactly the words on the back cover.
Have you had to say that so many times that you just like it's in your head already?
Oh, I could say that drunk, stoned, upside down, spinning in the dark. Yeah, for sure.
Perfect for
That's
this
awesome.
Yeah.
Perfect.
That would make a
Welcome to
good
Career
cover.
Views. Well, Ryan, clearly Fields of Fire is the beginning of a series. And as someone who has read a ton of them, you are familiar with the demands of keeping both the character and the stories fresh over the long haul. So as you were constructing this protagonist, what did you build into him to facilitate those future stories and that future character growth?
Oh man, I feel like you've asked me that before.
Fire.
So for me, there's so much I want to know about the character, right? I first created Matthew Red in a 10th grade English creative writing assignment. So we had this really awesome intern named Shay Vanderselt Wentz, who's a dear friend to me now and important in my life today. But she was like young and pretty, and we all wanted to impress her, and we really loved her, and she was so cool. And so she came in and gave us this creative writing assignment where she said we could like swear, we could have violence, we could do whatever we wanted.
Nice.
But we had to write the best that we possibly could. And so I took this like really seriously. It was like probably the first ever like school assignment I took seriously. Okay. All my buddies were like, oh, I'm just going to drop F-bombs and have fun. And I was like, oh, I need to like focus. I'm trying to plot this story. Like I got really into it. And so I delivered a short story called Maddie Red, which was about a teenage vigilante who stops like this attack on the school, and full of language, full of violence. And I didn't know that it was a peer-to-peer thing. So the next day, this poor kid named Trenton Hearn had to like read my paper in front of the class, and stopped so many times. Like he didn't want, like he kept looking to like our teacher for like, should I be reading this? And they were like nodding him along. And so I was like, this is great. I don't know what you're talking. Like all the kids were like, I can't believe you just wrote that. And I was like, I feel like I did a good job. I like was setting the scene. I was like doing stuff like way before my time as an author. The next day I get called down to the principal's office. My parents were there. The superintendent was there. Principal, vice president, the vice president. That was how important it was. Vice principal.
Chris was there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Chris was there too.
Handcuffs.
And basically they thought I was deranged.
Yeah.
And so they
Nice.
were like, you're suspended for sure.
Yeah.
And I had these parents that were really cool. Like I was in trouble a lot in school, and they were never on my side. This is like the one time where my mom, who's like the sweet old Christian lady, was like, what was the assignment? And when they told her, she was like, well, he did the assignment.
Yeah.
And I was like, that was a good point, score one for us. And they were like, yeah, no, he took it way too far. So he's suspended for a week. And my parents were like, you know what, learn from this, but you can just go do whatever you want. I say that because it's hilarious. The principal that suspended me is now my kid's principal. And when I run into him, I like to remind him that I got a week off school and a book deal out of this guy. So it all worked out. Red has been with me for a long time.
I'm curious. Did you kill the principal and the teacher in the story? Is that why they're like, what's going on?
No. But like every kid I didn't like in the school died. Like that part was probably too. I learned to foreshadow that, like, and hide that just a little, and then not be as obvious with it. But definitely in Fields of Fire, there's people that I've met throughout my life who tragically don't make it through this book.
I thought the death of Spike Bouts was really interesting. That was
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you know, we need to talk about more about this later on here.
Exactly.
Well, you made it into the book, though. That's fantastic. Right?
I feel like it's a real honor. Yeah. But so this character's been with me like all these years, and it was in my adult life. I sat down one day and I started thinking just randomly, like, what would he be up to today? What would Matthew Redd be doing today? So I knew the teenage version of him. I didn't know the adult version of him. And through sort of exploring that, Fields of Fire came to be. The whole plot came to me, the character, where he is. I think continuing to figure him out is what really drives me with wanting to write the series. They say write what you know. I believe in write what you want to read, and kind of went right in the middle on this one. So there's a lot, like I know family life. You know, I know what it's like to have kids and a wife and, you know, that stuff. So there's things I wanted to explore on a personal level with Redd that we don't really see in these types of books. These characters, like I think we all know the biggest rule of thumb is like, don't ever date the action hero because you're going to die in one of these books for sure. Yeah. And rather than just go that direction, I wanted to explore, yes, but what is it like when you have to live in this life and you have one foot in that world and one foot in like the world of being a family guy? How do you rationalize the violence you have to do and then like tuck your kids into bed, right? These were things that really appealed to me and concepts that I wanted to explore. And it's through developing some of those things that has really driven me. I wrote book 2. That's done, edited with my publisher. I'm working on book 3 now. And that's sort of like the area that I'm exploring now.
Well, we read a crap, the 4 of us, we read a crap ton of books every year, just, you know, for what we do, you know, for the rest of the industry. And so how conscious were you of trying not to copy or make some sort of amalgamation of all these different types of heroes that we read about all the time and try to make yours unique and not even, and maybe even try to avoid the subconscious comparisons to some of your favorite here, you know, Chuck's, you know, Brad Taylor, Brad Thorne, like how did you try to avoid doing that, and how conscious were you of that?
So when I knew I wanted to write the story about Matthew Redd and as an adult, like I really sat down and thought, what can I do that won't be like anything I've covered, that I've worked on? You know, I didn't want someone to read a review from the Books By and then go, oh, that's where he got this concept. So I kept thinking, like, where do we never see Mitch Rapp? Where do we never see Jason Bourne? Where do we never see these guys? And we never see them out west, like very rarely. And if it wasn't for Jack Carr, this would be like a really original concept. He's the guy I can't escape ever. And I just told him this the other day, drives me nuts. So when I first wrote Fields of Fire, I was talking to Jack. I don't think Terminal List came out yet. I had read it very early. And I was talking to him because he's like this Navy SEAL guy, knew everything. And I was like, you know, I really want to give my character like a unique weapon. I was thinking about like a tomahawk, like what kind do you think he would carry? And we're on the phone and he's like, maybe like the kind that's in my book. And I was like, oh, damn. Okay, well, yeah, you're right. Flash forward like a year and a half later, his second book was coming out and I was talking to him about my book. He knew I was writing and all that. And he's like, hey, tell me more. And I was like, dude, it's so original. Like it takes place in Montana. No one's done that. Like, you know, no one's put an action series in Montana and featured like, not just a book, but the series and everything else. And I'm going on and on. I'm like, so anyway, what's your next book about? Savage Son. And he's like, well, it's set in Montana. And I was like, no, it's not. No, it's not. He's like, yeah, it really is. It's set in Montana. And I was like, dude, this guy, I can't believe it. But we don't see these characters out west, and yet it's a perfect setting for them, right? When you think about the Wild West, it is so different. Like that whole cheesy line of like, call 911, and they're like, I am 911. But in a sense, that's very real. So yeah, sure. If you call 911 like here in the city, right, the response time is pretty quick. If you call for 911 out west or like call for backup, it could be hours, right, or longer.
Yeah.
And that concept really fits these alpha apex predator characters that we love, right? Like that really fits well for them. It also opens the door for them to deal with the kind of things that you wouldn't deal with, you know, elsewhere. And so I hope one of the things that makes Fields of Fire really different, and the whole series, by the way, being set in Montana and exploring the Wild West just a little bit, I do think gives it like a little bit of a different vibe. The other thing is, I didn't come at this from like a straight thriller perspective, right? This is not Vince Flynn. Everyone knows I'm probably the biggest Vince Flynn and Mitch Ratt fan alive. I'm not smart enough to write those books, man. Like, I'd be the first one to tell you that. Like, I can't do that. But I do think I can take that hero and put him in a world that I'm more comfortable with, in an environment that I'm more familiar with. And that was the goal. I hope that's kind of what makes it feel different.
Yeah, right.
I think that's why we like Mark Cameron's Arliss Cutter book so much, because not just the characters, but like the setting as well. It's just it's escapism for those of us who live in the city that like don't know really too much about Montana or Alaska in that case.
Right.
Yeah. Ryan, you run one of the most successful thriller review businesses in the industry. The Real Book Spy name has appeared on countless thrillers. You also provide editorial service to authors, and you also have how many kids? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 kids.
Yeah.
I have to imagine that leaves you little time to write, brother. So what do you do? How do you do it? How do you carve out that time?
Yeah, I get like 2 hours a day to write. That's pretty much where I'm at. But what I do is I don't think I'd be good with more than that. Like, honestly, my biggest fear is like, if the series takes off and I get to be a full-time writer, I'll be the most like unproductive person in the world. I couldn't sit down and write if I don't know what I'm writing. Like, that horrifies me. Like, this idea that you get up in the morning and you don't know for sure what you're going to write about, but you have to crank out this story. So you're just going to sit down and see where it goes. That's terrifying to me. I'm very visual, right? So my process is like, I get 2 hours to write. Before I sit down, I need to know what I'm writing. I don't have time to like sit there and think about it and stare at that Word document. So I spend all day between calls for work, between reading books for my job, making dinner, in the morning when I'm in the shower, brushing my teeth, like every spare second I have, I'm thinking about today. What is the scene I have to write today? And if you can write 1,500 to 2,000 words a day, that's like a chapter. You do that for like 2 months, you get a first draft out of it. So my goal is always get that first draft out. Just get the first draft. It's not going to be good, but the story's in there somewhere. You can find it. That's what the editing process is for. So I think about that scene. I let it play in my head all day like a movie. And generally I write from like 10 to midnight at night. So when I sit down, I know exactly what I have to do. So I just have to let that play in my head, type it out. What's tough is I usually will you always want to end your chapter in a way that pulls the reader onward. So I always sort of end in a way where I'm like, okay, they can't stop reading here. They have to turn the page, but I don't even know how I'm getting out of that problem yet. Right. I'm like, that's a problem for tomorrow. And I literally go to sleep thinking about what's the scene I have to write tomorrow. So my philosophy is just literally one chapter at a time, one scene at a time. I don't think big picture too much. In fact, so there's a saying in our industry, you have your whole life to write your first book, 1 year to write your second. You guys know that?
Yep.
Yeah.
That's because once they pay you, they want to see that next book, right?
Yeah.
Like, it dawns on you, you're so excited about this book deal. And I remember actually thinking like, oh crap, they're going to need me to write this. And so I was like, not going to do an outline. I was like, okay, I know how I can do this. And I remember telling my agent, like, very confident, like, I was like, I don't do outlines. I'm not going to do that. And he was like, yeah, you have a payment tied to your outline, so you're probably going to want to, write that. And I was like, oh, shoot. So I did a loose outline, and I basically had to tell my publisher, like, there's a good chance I'm going to stray from this, but this will be like my roadmap, and I might go left or right sometimes, but I'm pretty sure I'll still most likely, probably, hopefully end up here, and I'll see where it goes. And there were definitely times, man, along the way where I would have to like get on a Zoom call with my publisher and say like, okay, I was going to go this way, but what do you think of that? What do you think of this? And get feedback. And then, because it would happen a lot, I'd be on calls with them and they'd go, Ryan, this is really good. Red is really up against it in this book. We can't wait to see how you get him out of it. And I'd get off that call like, me too. Me too. I don't know how I'm getting him out of this. And so one day at a time, one chapter at a time, and that adds up eventually. And then you edit and you hope that it turns into something that's not terrible.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, so from your answer, you're kind of a hybrid. You're a pantser who plots before each day in a way.
Yeah.
So you're kind of a hybrid there. But kind of combining that with your last answer about the setting, Montana looms large in Fields of Fire. And clearly, from what you said, it's going to loom large in the Matthew Red saga. Do you does the landscape inspire set pieces? Do you ever, or are you searching out ways to use the landscape as you're writing? Does that make sense? Like,
yeah, yeah, a little bit of both. So I knew if I established that Red lives on a cattle farm, there was a reason for that. And you find that out in book 2. Like, I definitely knew that. More exploring Montana, book 3 that I'm writing right now takes place like entirely in the mountains. It's a scenario where Red, I can't give too much away, but like he has to go on the run by himself. And he basically has to survive for a few hours before any help can arrive. And the only place he can really go to get away from those he loves and put distance between him and them and the people coming after them is straight up the mountain. That came from looking at Montana and doing the research, and it was just really too good to pass up. I mean, it was right there. Those mountains, even in the cover, they loom large in the background. And I thought, I gotta get them up there isolated on these things, man, and kind of play around with that. And to make it harder, I put it like in the middle of a blizzard because why not? Why not?
It's Montana. It's gonna snow.
Yeah, it snows a lot there.
How can you make your protagonist's life worse?
I almost feel bad doing it, man. There was a scene in book 2, comes out next year, called Lethal Range. And I can't give a lot away, but I will say this: it was really hard to write, and I've never had a moment like that. I can remember it well. So I was sitting right here. It was late. It was almost midnight, and I knew what I had to write, and I couldn't bring myself to do it. I knew like what this was going to do to Red, who feels so real to me. Like, you guys know, like when you create these characters, they feel like a best friend you could never meet in person. You know them very well. I knew this was going to crush him. I knew what it was going to do to him just emotionally, and I was like, I can't do it. And I remember reading about George R.R. Martin. There's a pivotal scene in the Game of Thrones series called The Red Wedding, and he like couldn't write it. And I felt like that. It's not nearly as dramatic as his scene, but I was like, I couldn't do it. And I got up and walked around. I remember thinking like, I don't have to do this. Like, I'm in control a little bit on this thing, right? Like, I mean, I'm the one writing it. I could just not do it. And I had sat down and was looking for a way around it. And then I just thought, you know what? I have to do it. And I did it, and I really felt the weight. Isn't that weird? Like, I really felt like an emotional weight doing that to this character, and then having to deal with the aftermath in his point of view. And as I continued to write that, it was weird.
So what color did you pick for his fingernails or his toenails? Which one totally changed his life?
Purple, deep shades,
glitter.
As you were saying that, I was picturing God walking around going, flood or not flood. I mean,
fire.
It's a weird feeling, man. It really, and like, I talk about this stuff to like friends and family that don't read books, and they're like, yeah, it's interesting. So who you think the Lions are taking in the draft? Like, no one cares. No one cares. I remember talking to my dad about it. My dad is literally like, well, then just don't do it. I'm like, no, Dad, I have to do this thing in the story. And he's like, well, then just don't. And I'm like, it doesn't work that way. Like,
no, this is where the story's going. This is what is happening. Like, I can't. Yeah, you just got to write it.
You feel like you're in control, but like very much out of control at the same time. It's a really weird feeling. Yeah.
Well, you've edited a ton of books for other authors, and so you probably had some idea of what the writing process was like in order to be able to communicate with them. But what did you find surprising that you thought maybe you understood or didn't understand enough when you set out to write your own novel this time without somebody correcting things, for you, especially during the rough draft phase?
Yeah, man. It was, so the first thing I found out was that I'm like, I could be nicer in some things. Like, I've definitely worked with some writers, and I never understood it. That I would send some stuff back, and they'd be like, wow, did you like anything? And I'd be like, yeah, anything I didn't point out. You know what I mean? Like, we're here to fix the bad stuff, not the good stuff. And I remember the first editorial letter I got back from my editor at Tyndale, Sarah Risky, and I was like, oh, this is a totally different like way of doing this than I have, because she spent like a whole page building me up. And I was like, she really likes it. This is great. And then you get to the next page and you're like, oh, I got a lot of work still. And, but you're kind of riding that high of like, that's all right. There was a lot of good here. And that's the first thing that changed for me was like, I now ease myself into those calls with people I'm working with where I'm like, hey, this was really, really good. And I love this part. And then you got to break their heart. Right. Yeah. The second thing is you don't always think about, maybe it should be. I don't think most writers, their first thought with their first book deal is who's editing it. They're like, how much are they paying me? When's the book come out? Yeah. How much control do I have? You know? I don't think your first thought is like, who's editing this? And so when they assigned Sarah Risky to Fields of Fire, I was so thrilled. She's one of the best in the business. And like so thorough. And what I found is you need that person. You have to have that person to like bounce things off of, who knows your world as well as you do, but at the same time pushes you. Does that make sense? Right?
Sure.
Like, so we went through the edits on book 2 and Sarah would be like, hey, do you really want to do this? Because make sure like in book 1, you said this, and this. And I'd, oh shoot. Like, yeah, you're right. And there was literally times I would think, can't believe she caught that. Like no one else would catch that. Readers wouldn't catch that. It will be fine. But she pushes me. And there was something that we went back and I added to Fields of Fire. And we went through like the final edits. And I'll never forget this. She like left a comment about, hey, there's like these bikers and Red has a run-in with them. And he tells them like, get lost. And he never comes back to make sure they get lost. Is that a plot hole or problem? Should you maybe tie that up? And I was like, no, because I'm going to use that in book 2. Well, I 100% was not going to use that in book 2. It ends up being like 50% of the plot in book 2. Isn't that crazy?
That's awesome.
Hey, Ryan, have you found that you write stuff in your stories and you really don't know why you've written them, but then later on, or as you were just alluding to book 2, it totally makes sense why you actually wrote that? Isn't that just like the weirdest phenomena?
Dude, there's so many things that if people like read book 1 and book 2 might really think like I'm smart, and it was all by accident. I promise. Like there's so many things I set up I didn't even know I set up. I wrote Fields of Fire 6 years ago. I wasn't thinking about a book 2 at all.
Right.
You know, I was thinking about that book. So when we signed the deal and I was like, oh, there's that moment where I was like, this is great. It's a 2-book deal. They're going to expect me to write this other book, right? And your agent's like, well, yeah, you know, and you got to start looking at it. And I realized there were so many things that like I accidentally left either open-ended or set up and then didn't revisit. It like literally paved way for the story concepts on book 2. That still is crazy to me.
It's like your subconscious is just working, and you know, you eventually just pull those things out and use it.
It gives me a lot of comfort because like when I wrote book 2, there'd be things along the way. Even my agent would be like, hey, you want to relook at this or that? I was like, that's probably going to end up being the plot of the next book. Like, we'll just, I've been down that road, you know? Yeah. But yeah, it's a really strange thing. It really is.
All right. Well, so Tyndall House is publishing Fields of Fire. Was there anything in particular that drew you to this publishing house as opposed to the others?
Yeah. I mean, so I've seen what they've done with Joe Rosenberg.
Love him.
I know you guys like.
Stuff. Yeah, we love him.
Andrews and Wilson.
Yep.
Did a great interview with you guys.
Awesome.
I've seen what they're doing, and this is not a knock on other publishers, but there's been a lot of changes in the industry. The way certain things are perceived, the target audience, maybe they're after. There's just some things that, you know, you guys know all this, and a lot of it I can't say, right?
Yeah.
We all kind of know it. It's sort of the unspoken reality of where the industry, the genre is at. We live in a world where, you know, toxic masculinity is a thing. And that makes it really hard to write a hero who's like 6'3", 265 pounds of muscle that is like a sledgehammer in a scalpel's world, right?
Yeah.
If you're afraid of toxic masculinity, you're probably not going to like these characters across the board. The Mitch Rapps, the James Reese, the Jack Reachers, and yet go to Amazon. You know, all the top TV shows there are Terminal List. Jack Reacher did really good. Yeah. And so there's obviously an appetite and an audience for this. And what I loved was Tyndale was unflinching in their confidence that these are stories and characters that readers want. And I think there are, and now this is not like a top to bottom initiative with publishers, but there's people now within the ranks at some of the big five that I think are less confident in that direction. And I was really sold on Tyndale's acceptance of like, this is what readers want. Let's give it to them. And it's hard to find that right now. Right. So for them to back that and then really partner with me in this, I couldn't sign it fast enough, man. They made me a great offer, and they've been unreal. Support, helping me, advocating for me, teaching me a lot, bringing me along, and it's really been an incredible fit for me.
Did they put a limit on F-bombs? Like you can only have 3, you can only have 5.
Yeah. The PG-13 to rated R. Yep. But not. I mean, a lot of people were like, wow, that's crazy. You know, that Tyndale's an interesting fit. Like, can you not write what you want? And that's never been an issue. There were a few words they don't want me to say. And, you know, okay, so I remember when this first came up, we were told that ahead of time. And I remember saying to my agent, I was like, I don't know. You know, I don't know if I can get around that. And John Talbot is, he's a serious guy, but he's usually like very motivational in a nice way. And I'll never forget, he goes, well, if you can't find a way around it, you're either too lazy or too stupid.
Ouch.
That's what I was looking for.
Motivation.
Ouch.
but I thought about it later, and I'm like, how stupid, right? If your one limitation is like, you can't use the F word, and you're like, oh, then I can't write this book. Like, then you are either too lazy or too stupid. Let's be honest about it. And I found, I found my way around that, and I thought, look, if Joe Rosenberg can do it, you know, and you don't,
but you don't miss it. You don't miss it. Like you don't miss it in the book. It's not necessary. Yeah, just like exclamation points. You know,
exactly. Yeah, a lot of people that have read Fields of Fire, I don't think they even notice that there's not an F word in it. Honestly.
Yeah, that's good.
I'm too lazy and too stupid because they say it in my book. But no, Ryan, we've talked a lot about the fact that you have read a ton of books. So another thing you're very well versed in is how important key supporting characters are to making a novel hold readers' attention, but even after they turn the final page, you know, the people they think about after they put the book away. So who are your favorite characters to write other than Maddie, and where were they born in a figurative sense?
It's a great question, Sean. First time I've ever heard it.
Maybe.
So, and you know what? This kind of like continues on the last answer. So, beyond Red, who is obviously my favorite to write, Emily Lawrence, his high school sweetheart, plays a big role in book 1. She's my favorite, and it's because there's a lot of like strong women in my life. Like my wife, Melissa, is like, dude, she's way stronger than me. Like she's way tougher. Like she really is. I mean, she's had 6 kids. If I had to birth these 2, we'd have exactly 0. Like, let's be real, right? So, like, she is very like strong, like independent. I'm really attracted to that. You know what I mean? And and modeled a lot of Emily after her. But we had talks with one of the big 5 publishers, and they had read it, and some of the editorial advice they came back with was like, hey, this Emily character, like, you're going to kill her off, right? We just want to make sure. And I was like, oh, really? Like, they want me to kill her off? Like, I thought, so to me, she's very fundamental to the series because she's Red's moral compass. You know, that a great scene in the movie 300 where King Leonidas is about to kick the Persian down the endless pit. Right before he does it, he looks to his wife and she gives that nod. And to me, that was Emily to Red. And so I was like, no, I don't really want to do that. Day 1 with Tyndale, the very first conversation I had, they went, hey, Ryan, you know, we love Maddie. We love these characters. We love Emily. I love this. We just want to make sure that you're not planning to like kill her off. We see her as fundamental to the series. And I was like, they get it. You know, that's another reason I was all in. I love writing her because sometimes she opens her mouth and my wife comes out. But it's like a lot better when that's not directed towards me. And it's
like more fun to watch.
Another guy's problem. I'm like, you know, it's tough, Red. You're gonna have to, you know, it's what you got yourself into. And so that in book 2, I introduced a character named Mikey Durhammer, my best friend in real life. So this is another funny thing. I showed book 2 after Fields of Fire, Lethal Rain, showed it to my agent. publisher, and a couple other people. And the feedback was like, we love this character, this Mikey character. Like, great job, Ryan. He's really fleshed out. Like, you obviously really did a lot of character building. And it took a long time for I was comfortable enough to tell them, like, yeah, so he's my neighbor and best friend. He's like, he's real. And I didn't do anything there but just drop him into Red's world. The way he talks, the way he looks, everything is like, I didn't make any of it up. I enjoy writing that just because I can bust his chops. You know, I always tell him, like, yeah, you're gonna save the day in this one, buddy. And you know, like, this definitely Red's gonna be up against it, and Mikey's gonna save him. And like, I think he thinks book 2 is like the Mikey Durhammer show. And it's not obviously, you know, like, Red's the hero. He's gonna have to, you know, accept that. But Emily, because you know, I have 2 daughters, and she's what I hope my daughter's growing to be, right? A lot like my wife. And then Mikey, because I know the character so well and I love playing him off of Red. It's a lot like, you know, in real life, the way I would talk with Mikey. Beyond that, the bad guys are fun. The bad guys are fun. And for me, it's gotten more fun because so this will shock people, but like, I kind of borrowed the villain, Anton Gage, modeled him after someone. So he's a tech billionaire who's bought up more farmland than anyone in the continental US. And a lot of people are like, you know, that sounds a little bit like Bill Gates. And I'm like, no way. That's wow, really? And so when I first wrote that, everyone was like, Bill Gates is the best guy ever. Like, he's like everyone's favorite, like, uncle. And I was like, yeah, that's true. But I'm going to try to, like, show, like, if he's not Bill Gates, if someone like him had another side. Well, Bill Gates recently got, like, divorced. And turns out he's got another side to him. Some stuff that's been coming out. And everyone else is like, this is so shocking. And I'm like, this is great. This is great because now it makes my character so much more believable. And I have fun with I mean, it's hard to talk about why, but I have fun with the villains for sure. No one's ever the villain in their own story.
Yeah.
I think the best villains are the ones that you hate so bad you want the character to kill him, or the ones that you empathize with and you can understand why they're doing what they're doing. I really tried to deliver someone that starts one way and morphs into the other, you know?
Cool.
Are you sending Bill Gates a copy of your book?
Yeah, I think he'd be a big fan. Definitely.
Anyone who's seen the video of all those Microsoft guys dancing at that one event years ago knew he was capable of violence.
I could see it, man. I could see it.
When you write that first novel and you're working, you know, knee deep with your editor throughout, there's a ton to learn. And so what has changed about your process that you went into book 1 and that you're carrying all the way through now to book 3? You know, where have things kind of solidified for you in that whole process?
I actually feel much better about, like, book 3 than book 2. Not the story, just the writing, like, from when I started to write it on day 1. So I've been through it. That's a comforting feeling, right? When you do the first one, you're like, I guess I can do this. I don't know if I can do it in a year. Once you get that out of the way, I'm like, oh, this I could do this. And so you start to feel more confident about it. I think part of the reason is you gain the experience and you become more refined in your there's certain things along the way. Like, you can have a good story, right? But there's a technical side to writing. So do you know how to show and not tell? Do you know how to set your scene? Do you understand character growth and where those things are going? Those are not things that I think most first-time authors think about, right? You're thinking about the story and the characters. As you get into the business and as you see the other side of this, you realize those are fundamental pieces to making this thing work, right?
Right.
You can have what you think is a great scene that you think is really visual that pulls readers in, but the problem is you will always read it the way you see it yourself, right? So you learn to, so for me, I've learned to really lean on my agent, my editor, for that feedback, to know that I hit what I was going for here, you know, and I can see the scene, but that I put it on the page enough that you can see the scene. And I think that's probably the biggest thing I'm getting more confident with, is learning to write what I want to say, right? Write what I want to show as opposed to what I think I'm saying.
Right. That's good.
Well, anyone that follows you on social media might have noticed that you created a Twitch account. First, for those who don't know what Twitch is, maybe you can give an explanation of what it is and how the social media platform is used. And B, what drew you to it as a way to market yourself and Fields of Fire?
Dude, it's the craziest thing. Like, so Twitch, I didn't even know what that was till last year.
Yeah.
Twitch is a platform where people play video games and people watch, which sounds so boring, right? For like our generation. I remember when I first heard that, I was like, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. So when I was growing up, my cousins would never let me play like Nintendo, and I had to sit there and watch them. It wasn't fun. There's no chance I'd pay money for that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's a miserable experience. And someone said to me like, well, it's a multi-billion-dollar a year industry. That got my attention. I thought like why? And that's, what am I missing? And so I genuinely was curious about it at first, right? Like, how could this thing be flying under the radar? And I started to notice things like, you guys heard of FaZe Clan?
No.
Are you familiar with FaZe Clan?
I've heard of it, but I have no idea.
All of your children are big fans of FaZe Clan, just so you know. Snoop Dogg is part of FaZe Clan now. They made the cover of Sports Illustrated. Esports is becoming a thing, right? When I was growing up, the people who played the video games, they were like nerds. They were like the people that couldn't, like, there was no esports. It was so the opposite, right?
Yeah.
It was like the opposite of sports. And so we're seeing this like explosion. What really intrigued me about it was there's not a single thriller author in that market. And so when you start talking about how do you brand and how do you sell a book, most first-time authors, they want you to gain an audience with book buyers. It just so happened I was pretty fortunate to be a book spy. Sort of had a footing in that market. Yeah. So the question became, where do we expand? And, you know, when something happens and Fox News and CNN brings on like Brad Thor or like Daniel Silva or Jack Carr, but they're not going to call me. I'd rather hear what those guys have to say. So you're not competing with that. You're not going on Fox News. You're not talking about all this stuff. And I'd be the worst at it anyways. I literally wrote about the Georgia Guidestones and Fields of Fire, and then took it out last minute, and they just got like destroyed and blown up. Like that would have been a great thing for me to like be on the news, like, oh, I saw this coming, but I took it out.
I'm gonna put it in mine.
I'm so mad. I can't believe I did that.
Yeah, we should invade France. What? I'm sorry. What is that, Ryan? Yeah, we should invade them.
Exactly. I'm not that guy. Like, I promise you don't want my take on that. So the question became, where can we go? My agent has a client named Lamb, who is a real life guy who's a character in Call of Duty Warzone, just like the #1 video game in the world. And I started looking at like his following and how big it was and how successful he's been, in part because of a video game. And so I started playing that with my kids. I've always played with my kids, but never in like a competitive sense. And the more we talked about it, the more my agent really, who was like, Ryan, you got to do this, get on there. And so I started studying Twitch. What is it? What makes people want to watch? And what I realized is it's not really about the video games at all. The video games is what gets you there, right? Like that's what gets you on the platform. It's almost like part-time reality TV. Like, I'm basically a Kardashian at this point. Okay. That's what this is. You're not just playing the game. Like, people come in,
sex tape,
and it's about hanging out. It's about, listen, it's about hanging out, getting to know people. And, you know, we talked about this in the unairable episode with you guys. Yeah. So when you talk about like Twitch, what makes that work? Well, back when Brad Thor and Vince Flynn were coming up, they had these things called forums. My kids literally don't know what that is, by the way. I'm like, you guys remember forums? They're like, no, Dad. Like, I'm like, they have no idea what that is.
Hustler.
Well, so Vince Flynn had the third option. Brad Thor had the forum. And it was a way for readers to interact with them early in their careers to get to know them. It was that one-on-one personal level. I think Twitch has the potential to be that in the year 2022. Like, I really think that gives people access to me where they can get to know me, but I get to know them. And so it's really not about the game. I stream every night at twitch.tv/legit_Twitch. That's where you can find me. I even have a Discord server. I didn't even know what that was 6 months ago, guys. Okay.
I'm still trying to figure that out.
I'm still trying to figure it out.
Ask a 10-year-old.
I literally can't. All the time I'm calling my kids in my office. I literally this morning I had to post it and I was like, Brand, get in here. I couldn't figure it out. So it's interacting with people and letting them get to know you, getting to know them. And it's been like this really personal, intimate thing where I I've so enjoyed meeting these people and hanging with them every night. So I have mods. This guy Shane, I call him Box, and he's a former Marine, he's 40 years old. I have another mod. She's a 50-year-old Army wife. Like, that's probably not the demographic people think of when they think of Twitch. I have one of my favorite viewers is, her name is Virginia, and I'm not sure how old she is, but she's not the 20-year-old people think of when they think of Twitch. Her only real interaction with video games was her son was in college years back, she said, and his grades were bad. So she drove up to his dorm, kicked his girlfriend out, stole his Xbox, you know, and she's tuning in every night. Like, why? And I can't answer that question other than to say, I think people want to get to know authors. They, you know, and there's this disconnect a lot of times in social media. Social media is so fake. You see everything is perfectly shot, and it's all what you want to project, right?
What?
I know I just blew your mind with that. But social media is not real. And so
Well,
I think there's a hunger to get beyond that, right? Like, who really is this person?
Yeah.
And I think when you come to Twitch, man, it's so unfiltered. It's all very real.
Like the Kardashians.
Yes.
It's like I mean, what's realer than the Kardashians? I spent half my time terrified that Mikey's going to get me canceled when he starts to get pissed off and saying things he probably shouldn't say on stream. I have like a bleep out button I start hitting real quick. But it's been this wild experience. I have a regular, his name is Jeremy. I got to rename him Jace. Think of the power of that. Yeah, I was like, you're Jeremy. Like, I literally renamed this guy Jace, and it's how my whole community now, and like, he refers to himself as Jace at this point. Right? Wow,
you're like Palpatine
because I misread
on Twitch.
His screen name. I misread his screen name, and I was like, oh, Jace. And he's like, oh, my name's Jeremy. And I was like, it's too late, man. I called you Jace. Like, that in my brain, that's. And so we ran with this. I literally signed a book to him the other day and wrote out like 2 Jace, and I was like, wow. You're gonna have to explain this to people, but that's gonna be your problem. And so it's been crazy, man. There's book fans in this world, and then there's people that are just now learning about the book because they enjoy Twitch. You know, it's been the best of both worlds, but it's really taken off. And I haven't been this excited about something since I launched the Book Spy. Honestly,
nice.
That's cool. Good luck, bro.
We were thinking about kind of combining those two things and having a show where people just tune in to watch us read, and to ourselves, not out loud. And
in my head,
even better.
Did he Twitch or something? I don't know. We're working on it.
Tweety Twitch.
You know what I did one time? This was like early days of the Book Spy when like cell phones came out with like shoot, what's that called? Where like you take the video over time and then it shows it real quick.
Oh yeah. Time lapse.
Time out things. You know what I'm talking about? Yeah. So it's just the stupidest thing I ever shot. So I mounted like my phone up on my old desk and filmed me reading a book for like 5 hours, and I thought it'd be awesome to like time lapse it. Dude, it looks like it's the same 2 seconds on a loop. All it is me like turning a page. And I was like, wow, this video sucks. Like, I can't use this. That probably still exists on a computer plan.
Yeah.
Yeah. Probably a huge market for that.
I mean, maybe you're showing if you read it naked.
Yeah, well,
but just videotape from the neck up,
right there.
Okay.
From the neck up, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Full Kardashian on that one.
So one more question. So obviously the book, you're on book 3. The book's got a ton of heat right now. I know it's early, but is there any TV film interest? And is it true that Gnawbone Productions has optioned it?
Yes.
Shit, that's right.
You guys should option it. Yeah. So we're flirting with some people for sure. It's when I first wrote Fields of Fire, I realized pretty quickly it was a modern day Western, but at the time Westerns were not like big in pop culture. And I remember when I even first signed like with Tyndale, I was like, well, it's a modern day Western, but I will never say that publicly.
Yeah.
And then Yellowstone took off in 1883, and I was like, hey, so Fields of Fire is a modern day Western, everybody. You know, you change your pitch on that real quick. Real quick. So there's an appetite all through Hollywood for these modern day Westerns. And I think on top of that, you see the success with like Terminal List, the Jack Reacher stuff, the Jack Ryan stuff, a lot of success turning thriller novels into TV shows and such. So, I mean, I'm hopeful, man. I think it would, I think it's very unlike anything else out there right now. Right.
Yeah.
And, you know, Taylor Sheridan, if you're watching, you should definitely go make Fields of Fire into a TV show. Yeah.
but cut down your output, Taylor, because you're writing too many damn things. Drop everything else and
I don't
jump
know how he does it.
He's got some help.
Ryan, congratulations. We're going to raise a glass because you've again survived the main portion of the interview.
That's to be seen.
Which is nothing but a preamble to the actual meet.
This is the real interview here.
I'm not even confident that we won't have to shoot this a third time at this point. Like, let's.
What?
Welcome to Meet Ryan Steck, or the lightning round. All right, so I'll go first since I'm hosting. I know people on Twitter may think that the thriller world started with Mitch Rapp and Scott Harvath, but hey, guess what? There were thrillers before. So I want to know, what is the Real Book Spy's favorite thriller that was written before 1990?
So Hunt for Red October, for sure. And I know this is a lightning round, but let me just say, I still think it's one of the best books ever written.
What?
I got one too. It's a great
You
one,
must have
man.
watched the last video.
And it holds up too. And a lot of books, if they were written just like that today, wouldn't get published. Those long chapters, the long descriptions. You know, my agent was one of the first editors at Penguin to work with Clancy. And so I always pick on him because if he's like, hey, Ryan, this is really good. Why don't you cut this? Why don't you do that? And I'm like, where were you for Hunt for Red October, John? Felt like I could drive the submarine by the time I was done with chapter 6. But sure, let me take out this one line. And so I have history there. But I think when you read that today, dude, there's nothing like it out there right now. It holds up. So I actually do think it's Clancy's best book.
All right.
Yeah, I think it's up there. I think Without Remorse.
Oh, that's a good one too.
And then it's bigger scope with Red Storm Rise.
Anyway, and then the one they ripped off for Designated Survivor. That one, I forgot the title of that one. But the one where they stole that Kiefer Sutherland show, the one where they sort of ripped off that idea, that was another good one too.
Right.
Good point. Okay, so name an author. You name a lot of authors in your newsletters and online, everything, but I want you to name an author who we might not have discovered yet, but we should all be reading.
So one guy would be Landon Beach, who you guys had on.
Yep.
He's got this book out, Narrator.
Yep.
Dude, it's a mind trip.
Yeah.
Loved it.
I've never read anything like it in my life. Flew right through that. So impressed with that book. Connor Sullivan, good buddy of mine, Sleeping Bear. His next book, dude, one of my most anticipated books of.
He lives in Montana. You might want to talk to him.
Yeah, I'm just saying he might have been someone I contacted. Things. And then another one that is very much in the vein of even Fields of Fire, and he stole the best title ever, so I hate him so bad. But Taylor Moore, Downrange. That I wanted to use that, which I have Lethal Range coming out next year, by the way. No, Taylor is fantastic. Taylor is, I share an agent with him, so I'm not plugging him for that reason. I literally was so confident with Fields of Fire, and I read Downrange, and I was like, what am I doing? This guy, he's lights out.
Yeah, we love him.
Excellent. And even if he wasn't a good writer, he turned me on to Still Austin Bourbon, which is one hell of a drink. So that's for Taylor.
Thanks, commercial break.
Great writer. Another modern day Western, like you said, that would be great. All right, my final question is predict the Lions' record this season and give me the rationale behind your answer.
So since I last answered this question for you, Sean, I've seen 2 Hard Knocks episodes. So the hype is growing for me. I think they're going to go, I want to say 7-10 because they're still Detroit. So I have almost no faith in them. But I see Dan Campbell, the head coach. I want to put pads on and go play for him. So, and trust me, I'm not who you want out there. But like, I'm starting
just went down if you get signed.
Yeah, I'm starting to think they might be for real. So I think there's a chance they win 9 games this year.
All right. I like it.
All right. Me next. Okay. A lot of your viewers want to know what the Michigan State bird is.
Maybe a robin.
I don't know. I thought you knew. All right, great.
Let's. I'm gonna say it more confidently. The robin.
Okay.
Pretty sure that might almost be it.
A lot of his viewers wanted to know that.
I think people are dying to know that.
Just saying. All right. Number 2. Who was the greatest Detroit Lions player of all time?
Barry Sanders.
There you go. And that's the only answer for Detroit.
Yeah. I mean, well, Calvin Johnson probably has
softball.
Calvin Johnson. So I covered the Detroit Lions for 1 year, as you guys know.
Yeah.
And I will say this: I'm my last day was in Detroit, and my kids got to meet Calvin Johnson, and he signed a bunch of stuff for them and was super cool. So I'm tempted to go with him because what a talent.
Yeah.
But it's Detroit. They wasted it. They wasted all those good years.
Yes.
Same thing with Barry, but I think Barry is the best running back of all time. So
I got to say that's like asking who is the greatest Tigers baseball, coach of all time.
Who cares?
Look, you guys can all bitch, but you know what?
Exactly.
Here's the thing. You didn't think of the question I did.
Thank you, Sean.
No, with Barry Sanders, it matters. It matters. But hey, by the way, Ryan, what was their record the year you covered him?
0-16. It was quite the year, man. Think about this. I wrote about the Lions for 1 year, and not once did I ever get to write about them winning a game.
Again.
Don't write about the crew reviews, please.
Coincidence? Oh no.
Exactly.
All right, great. There goes the other idea we had. Okay.
Although I am pretty certain I was not the issue with that organization, just so we're clear.
Allegedly.
Maybe.
Yeah. It did happen at the same time. Okay, here we go. Matthew Red goes on undercover to foil a plot to assassinate a high-ranking government official. What will be his drag queen stage name for this book?
Well, last time I answered too fast and you made fun of me. So this time I'm going to pretend to think about it for a second.
And then tell us the same answer.
Sapphire. I think Sapphire is it. I think that's it, guys. Sapphira. I would drag it out. I would, kids always like take a word, but they change the way it sounds now. So Sapphire, because I think Fields of Fire, that's a good fit.
Sapphire, S-A, and then
He's put a lot of thought into this since the last time, right? I think.
No, I've not.
Me asking this question a second time, it's going to show up in the next book. Yeah. Yeah, it's one of those other weird coincidences. Okay.
Yeah.
What are you guys gonna do if I make that be one of his like a cover name or something in a future book?
We're just gonna say we told you. Yeah.
We knew it.
We would keep running this clip over and over again.
Kind of like what we do to Todd Goldberg, right?
Yeah.
The same clip over on that guy.
It's actually, we're really doing it to Lee Goldberg, not Todd Goldberg.
That is true.
It affects both.
It's Lee, yeah.
All
All right. Is it my turn?
Yeah.
Do we get to go?
Yes.
Take us home, Chris.
All right. Yeah. So there's going to be dueling shows coming up. One's already started, and HBO, and I think it's Amazon. But you have Rings of Power versus House of the Dragon. Which one are you more excited about?
House of the Dragon.
Did you watch the first episode yet?
I did, man. I watched it last night. I thought it was great.
My HBO
That was
Max
fantastic.
sucked
All
last
it did,
night.
though, I was like, this was fantastic. And you should have had that thought going into. You should have been confident. But they effed up season 8 of Game of Thrones so bad that they almost made it irrelevant.
Yeah. And 7.
And I was like, we should have came into this confident, but they literally screwed up so bad with the final season of Game of Thrones that you were like, it might be all right. No, I thought it was great. I'm a big Game of Thrones fan. Big fan of George R.R. Martin.
Yeah.
They got almost, I think it was 9.99 million viewers.
That's why I couldn't watch it last night. My HBO Max kept crapping out.
Well, you would have made it 10 million, Mike.
I tried.
You're the guy.
By the way, in answer to Chris's question, I was err on the side of which one has more nudity. So I would go with House of Dragon. So.
Oh my gosh, dude!
I cannot wait to watch
scenes in there.
There were. Listen, if you're over under was at 1 for castration scene, nailed it. I mean, it was. Did I just see what I think I saw?
I don't want to hear anymore.
Don't listen. Wow, there was some crazy shit though. Oh my god. The one guy.
Mike took his earphone.
No, wait, pull the ears out. Pull them out. Pull. The one guy who was trying to get everybody to quiet down.
You still got to edit it.
Unreal. All right.
It was like I pointed out, you still have to edit it. So it's not.
Sons of bitch. I'm not editing until I watch it. That's right.
They threw me and the opening shot. I thought they were going to show like the ghost of Daenerys.
Yeah,
dude, it looked.
And I was like, "Oh, they brought back the Khaleesi," and then I was like, "Who's this chick?" Like, oh man, I was hooked.
So similar.
Yep.
All right, let's go back to books for a second. Then, what's the worst thing an aspiring author can do when trying to break into the publishing industry? What's like the no? Like, don't
overbill themselves on social media before they've done anything.
No,
we live in a time. God damn it!
Examples.
I said it with a straight face, Mike.
Let's go to the tape.
Yep.
And
so we live in a time Damn, I was doing good till I saw how red Sean's face is right now. We live in a time where so many people they want to live that life where they've done anything, and they get all over social media, and they have these author websites and like join my author newsletter when they don't even have an agent yet or a book deal. And I would say this, and I thought this goes without saying, but I see people doing it, believe it or not. I've literally seen people tweet like, "Oh, I got my 168 rejection, sending out new queries on Monday." And you're like, why would you do that? Like, why? I mean, that would literally be like leading into a first date saying, "I'm divorced 12 times, but I think I have a lot to offer you." You know, it's just not a good look, man. Why would you lead with that? And what agent out there is going, "I think they're a hidden gem. 168 already passed, but I think I'm the one that's, you know, really sees it for what it is." It's a bad look. And so what I would say is take the craft of this very seriously. Like get an agent, get a book deal, and then get yourself out there like that. But we have people that don't have an agent, don't have a book deal, and they're out there giving writing advice and career advice in newsletters that no one's reading, and it looks really bad.
You know that's a story that, like, I think is told better in the rearview mirror. Like, you know, it's the Vince Flynn story is great, but Vince wasn't telling that story before he made it. You know what I mean? I mean, he wasn't telling.
Really good point, man. Yeah.
It's an inspiring story, but tell it in the rearview mirror. Don't
100%
tell it before it's manifested.
Like Kyle Mills, who took over for Vince Flynn, same thing. He had so many rejections from agents. He would tack them up on a board, and there were so many the board fell off his wall. You know, the cork board. That's not something you lead with when you're writing your next query letter. You know, so many rejections. My query board just fell off my wall. No, you wait until you've got the agent, the book deal, and all that, and then you can look back on that journey. And you're right. I think you tell that story later for sure.
Yeah.
And I have one final question. One serious final question. What's the one thing, movie, book, or television series other than Game of Thrones that we talked about before that you're really looking forward to? What's on your list?
So the season 3 of Jack Ryan, I'm excited about because season 1 was so good and season 2 was so what my kids would say mid. Okay.
Yeah.
It's Cap.
Yeah. So
did I use that right?
So mid.
Did I use that right?
I don't think we did. But like they wrote out Kathy and it was like I really didn't understand the direction of season 2. And I love John Krasinski. I think Alec Baldwin was a great Jack Ryan. I think Krasinski is probably my favorite. I think he fits the role so perfectly.
Yeah.
That I would love to see them rebound. And Amazon has done so many good things with like Jack Reacher. Oh man, that first season is so phenomenal.
Yeah, agreed.
Terminal List, so good. And I think it's easy then to forget that Jack Ryan season 1 was as good as those other shows.
Yeah, I enjoyed it just as much. Yeah,
season 2 went just off the rails. Yeah. The ending, I was just like, what is going on?
Yeah.
No, season 2 is not good. I'd like to see that rebound, but then I'm excited about, follow-ups to all those shows. And then the Bosch Legacy show, that's another one.
Yeah.
I'm really pumped for that.
Amen. Hey, listen, man. Speaking of true, and I hope people see it, this is a hell of a book.
Yeah,
yes.
Great debut. We're excited for you, man. I know it's really cool to see you go from one side of the table to the other.
Yep, crazy. That's awesome.
Thanks, guys.
And we're really excited for it. And I know, again, I love the fact you're on book 3, so we know we have that to look forward to.
I should have recorded this episode actually. So
holy shit!
Cheers to you.
I appreciate it, guys. I'm still getting used to being on this side of it. I did Jack Carr's podcast, and I had to stop myself. 5 minutes in, I started asking him the questions because that's what I'm so used to. And I was like, "Oh, you gotta stop, Ryan." So I had to calm down and let the questions come to me, man. It's still weird being on this side of it, but I'm a big fan of all you guys on the show. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. Great to see you, Val.
Cheers, bro.
Take it easy.
Hey, boys. We had the real book writer on the show, Ryan Steck, and his debut Fields of Fire. Again, another hell of a night with you guys and a great guest. Get out there and buy this book.
Yep.
You guys have been reading his stuff for ages. Now read his fiction.
Okay. Here we are. Go get it. Cheers, boys.
Book in a glass.
Mm. Meow. And here we are. This is the outro for Fields of Fire. Ryan Steck, and it's Johnny's turn. And I'm not sure what color that shirt is, so I'm just going to leave it alone. And
Doo-doo.
3,
It's brown. It says neat.
2, and neat.